for attending this Youth and Adult Pathways webinar. I understand there's horrific weather on the East Coast, so thank you all for being with us. I'm Judy Shanley, and I'm the Director of Student Engagement and Mobility Management at Easter Seals, the national office in Chicago and also Washington, D.C. And I'm also serving as the facilitator of this month-long Youth and Adult Pathways event related to career counseling and career planning. And we're real excited that you're participating in this live webinar. And I hope that you've had an opportunity to review some of the discussion that we've had and listen to the first archived webinar that was done. I think there's really 4 things that we've tried to do throughout this month-long event. One is we've tried to provide you with tools that can be used across youth and adult education settings. We know that resources are thin, and it makes sense to identify tools that have applicability in both youth and adult education settings. Secondly, we've tried to introduce resources across federal sectors. I think we sometimes get siloed in our work, and it always amazes me regarding the rich resources that exist across federal sectors. So if you've noticed throughout this month, we've shared resources from not only OVE, the Office of Vocational Adult Education, but also OSEP, the Office of Special Education Programs, and also the Department of Labor and the Office of Disability Employment Policy. There's really valuable resources that come from across those sectors, and I hope you found them useful. Third, an important theme that I hope you've observed throughout this month, and it'll be evident next week when we have guest discussant, is the engagement of students in this process. I think the research bears out that having students involved as decision makers in their own career planning and career development process leads to better outcomes. So we've tried to involve students as much as we can, and I think that you'll hear today from Curtis Richards about individualized learning plans as one way to engage students in this process. I also hope you've been able to see the connections across the various youth and adult pathways topics that we have ongoing. I know last month the topic of strategic partnerships was discussed, and a lot of what we've talked about during this month focus on strategic partnerships as well. So there's connections across the YAP topics. And finally, there's connections across what we're doing in the Youth and Adult Pathways microgroup and the links forums that many of you are probably involved in. It's very exciting to be leading this effort on behalf of OVE, and we're particularly excited to have Curtis Richards with us this afternoon. Curtis is the director for the Center for Workforce Development, and he's the director of a project funded by the Office of Disability Employment Policy, the National Collaborative on Workforce and Disability Youth. I've known Curtis for years, and one thing that strikes me about his work is that he has the policy experience and the national kind of perspective. He, at one time, was the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services. So he understands from a policy perspective the kind of guiding policy that frames the topic of career counseling and career pathways. But importantly, Curtis has been a technical assistance provider for years. He's worked at the state and the local levels, and so he's got that on-the-ground, contextualized experience with it, which I think is really important. I included his full bio on the discussion forum of the YAP website, so I won't go into it further, but I hope you'll take time and look at his tremendous experience and how fortunate we are to have him as part of our webinar today. Just a little housekeeping. If you have questions, there's a chat feature in the GoToMeeting software here. So if you have questions at the end of Curtis's discussion, I'll field those questions, and we can have a discussion about what we hear today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Curtis. And again, thank you so much from you as an audience being here. And Curtis, thank you for your time today. Curtis?
Thank you, Judy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, excellent. Thank you. And again, I appreciate the introduction. Introductions are always interesting. That was really nice, what you had to say. The one thing I want to say to everybody before we get started also is I'm a person with a visual impairment, and I use a screen reader, a dock reader, special assistive technology that is not working particularly well with this webinar platform. So I am going to have to ask, I'm going to ask for assistance from somebody, and I'm going to have to say next slide every time it's time to move on to the next slide. So with that, could we start with the first slide, please? I'm also getting over a cold, as you can't tell. All right, so what we're hoping to do in this conversation today, in this webinar today, is to share with you basically some findings of research that we've done for over the last 5 or 6 years around individualized learning plans. And we're going to talk through what they are, what strategies folks are using in order to make these plans meaningful and come alive. And we have some policy recommendations that we're making, and we thought we would throw out the ones that are particularly focused at the state and local level. Next slide, please. As Judy said, I am with a National Technical Assistance Center known as the National Collaborative on Workforce and Disability for Youth. Big, long, fancy name. Technical Assistance Center that has been funded by the U.S. Department of Labor now for the last 12 years. We're fortunate enough to be in our 3rd round. We focus primarily on transition age youth. That would be middle school through about 25 to 30, with the clear intent of trying to help people understand the needs of young people and how we need to help move them toward work, particularly, and with an emphasis on young people with disabilities and other disconnected youth. Our primary focus is all youth, but then we have an emphasis on the disability and other disconnected youth. And again, as we said, we are being supported by the Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy. Next slide, please. The basis of all of this work is really comes out of the 3-phase career development model, and you'll see this throughout this conversation, throughout the work around ILPs, individualized learning plans, really where we're zeroing in on having young people engaged in self-exploration, that is trying to figure out what their strengths are, their interests, sort out the kinds of things that they may be interested in doing and in exploring. The career exploration issues, which covers everything from how somebody gets out and really learns about a job, learns about a career, guest speakers, site visits, meeting employers, those sorts of things. As I like to talk about, a trip to the airport where you get to see the multiple kinds of jobs that exist behind the scenes, not just the ones that you're familiar with seeing up front. And then the issues all around career planning and management, which really have to do with your skill building, getting your resume ready, practicing your interviews, maintaining your records and updating your records as you're moving toward careers. Next slide, please. So when we particularly like to focus on this model because it really gives young people the opportunity to identify all sorts of interests, to be able to clearly start to sort through the kinds of things that they want to do, to change their minds as they're bound to do, to connect careers with the kinds of things that are in their value interests, identifying courses that they can work through, start evaluating their skills, you know, all sorts of things, including trying to figure out what additional education that they're going to need along their lifespan as they're moving toward, you know, toward their career goals. I do want to say our work, as I said, is really focused on transition age youth, and the findings of what we've been doing here is really comes from having done work in middle schools and high schools, but we believe that this is absolutely transferable beyond high school, beyond the high school years, beyond the high school walls, frankly. We believe that there's a lot of possibilities here in what we've discovered that's going on in the States for out-of-school programs as well, for adult programs as well. And we're beginning to see some of that pickup in non-school-based programs. Next slide, please. So what is an individualized learning plan, ILP? That's the generic name that we're using. Some states call them graduation plans. Some states have their own names for them. My favorite happens to be Georgia, where they call it the Peachtree Plan. As you can see here, Colorado has the Career Academic Plan. Connecticut has something that they call the Student Success Plan. So you're not going to, if you just Google individual learning plan, you're not going to find that necessarily in all the states because they, you know, they tailor to their own needs. When we started this project 5 years ago, there were 21 states that had either adopted some form of legislation mandating the use of individual learning plans or you know, proclaimed it by either the State Board of Ed or the governor. Today, we now know that there are 37 states, including or plus the District of Columbia, so the equivalent of 38 states. So this is something that clearly the states are picking up and using as part of their improving graduation standards and graduation requirements, and in order to try to help strengthen driving folks towards college and toward careers. And you see here the purpose: in order to personalize the learning experiences, develop college and career readiness skills, et cetera. You also see that and we'll emphasize this because of our emphasis on disability, that an ILP is not the same as an individualized education program under special education, under IDEA and special education. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Next slide, please. We have found it necessary, because ILPs are all over the map, to come up with a definition of what we believe to be, based on our research, what we believe to be a quality individualized learning plan. Because the ILP is really both a document and a process. And as you see here, the first prong of the definition revolves around documenting course-taking patterns and post-secondary planning, also documenting the range of things that they're doing as they're preparing for college, such as maintaining papers or maintaining letters of recommendation from internships or what have you. But then there's also very clearly a very dynamic process that the young people go through in order to learn the relevance of what they're learning in school and apply it toward their career exploration, their career planning and management. So it's both a document and a process. It is a dynamic instrument that young people, hopefully young people, are driving and leading themselves with assistance from counselors, from teachers, from family members, etc. Next slide, please. This is just a quick snapshot of the kinds of things that we found as it relates to why we should be using individual learning plans. And so as you can see, you know, engaging in ILPs, one of the benefits is that it increases their goal setting, it increases their young person's motivation, it increases academic and self-efficacy, and it increases career decision-making, their own ability to make informed choice and informed decisions. we also have seen, I don't think I have this slide, but we have also seen that there's a very positive impact between the family member and the young person as they're sitting at home, as the young person is sitting at home working on the ILP and being able to then have, for the first time, real adult conversations with their family members about their direction, their sense of direction, and where they're going and what they need to do. Next slide, please. So we also have found that there are other benefits to having these individual learning plans, particularly in the education departments and schools and arenas, because we're breaking down silos between career tech ed, special ed, general ed. You're really getting where these individual learning plans are working really well. You're getting all parts of the education system together at the same place, and you're breaking down silos across systems. So in many places, you're actually getting the workforce folks involved. You're getting employers involved. Kentucky, for example, has a real strong emphasis on having employers involved in helping support the young people in the schools and the individual learning plans. We see here strong emphasis on annual student-led parent-teacher conferences where they go over, what they've done in the course of the year and where they're going to be going in the course of the next year. Officials perceiving increased students with disabilities graduating. We're seeing where it's working for young people with disabilities, and that's not working everywhere for young people with disabilities, but where it is, we're definitely seeing some increased engagement in school and in graduation. And then access to e-portfolios. The better plans tend to be electronic portfolios rather than paper and pencil plans, and where the student can go in and maneuver and host things, where counselors can go in at any point in time and look at them. So certainly moving toward electronic planning tools is something that we found extremely helpful. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about the difference between individual learning plans and the individual education program or plan under IDEA, the special education law. First of all, ILPs are not federally mandated, and in fact, we've had a lot of advice from the field saying not to make them federally mandated, as opposed to the IEP, which is federally mandated in the civil rights statute that governs special education. So the IEP has some very clear parameters that you're supposed to be putting inside an IEP to drive a young person with disabilities education, and ILPs do not have that. ILPs and IEPs, however, are very complementary and can be very complementary, where the ILP basically lays out the career goals and all of the career expectations and does the exploration, and then the IEP, particularly as they're getting close to the transition age, can come back in and lay out the kinds of supports and accommodations necessary to be able to meet those goals. So not the same, but can be very complementary. Next slide, please. So the next several slides are really an attempt to try to give you a sense of some strategies that ILPs are using in order to get young people moving toward college and toward careers. Excuse me. And again, that really is about getting young people engaged in the whole career development, the multiple phases of the career development, in getting them to use online career information systems and e-portfolios, such as ONET, go in and be able to use those sorts of things. Get them to be able to make career decisions as part of the regular school day, as part of advisory periods. We found is one of the best places. Other places are actually doing it right during regular school classroom times. Again, the student-led parent-teacher conference is another strategy that we've that we found to be quite effective. Next slide, please. I'm not going to read through these next few slides. I want to highlight them. What we've attempted to do is to paint a picture for you. On the left-hand side, some of the strategies, and on the right-hand side, some of the tools that are available to be able to in this particular case, to do the self-exploration, right? So you see, at the beginning how they're identifying their own abilities and their own skills, and then the kinds of things that they can do, completing an online career, interest, ability, and values assessment using ONET, for example. Or another tool, is completing what's called why should I hire you assessment, self-assessment. There are a number of things that we have created that I'll talk about here in a little bit. Some of which is referred to here, and then there are other things that are just out there in internet space that are free and available to be used and tapped for these purposes. Next slide, please. Now, in the area of self-exploration, here again, here's a list of items, and then it tells you, in some cases, where they actually come from. Some of these are ours, instruments that we've had developed over the last 6-7 years, and then others are publicly available. I'll let you look at that for a second. Okay, next slide, please. Similarly, as we get into the career exploration issues, right here we have some tools or activities around goal setting begins with a dream, considering labor market information in your career choice activities. All of these are designed and available to try to help in doing some of the career exploration. Again, this is the area also where you want to bring in guest speakers. You want to organize tours. Like I said, the airport earlier. We have another example is taking folks to Six Flags, and not just for the purposes of having fun, but for taking them behind the scenes to see what the ride operators have to work with, or what what the security is, and all of the multiple jobs that actually exist at Six Flags, or at any amusement park, as opposed to just the fun and games that they would typically think of. Next slide, please. So additional strategies and resources here around career development. In some places where you can find them, again, you'll see ONET, some examples out of ONET. You see at the bottom here, there's a reference. We essentially, there's a citation to what we call our ILP how-to guide. As we were doing this work with schools, we were in 14 different schools across the country, and the teachers that were involved in the work were asking for a simple toolkit to be used. And so the link you see at the bottom there is to what we call our how-to guide that walks through each of these career development areas, and has a whole host of examples that can be used, tools that can be used, including the Department of Labor's skills to pay the bills tool, which is aimed at trying to help improve soft skills. Next slide, please. And here we do the same thing around career planning and management. Oh, and look at that. There's skills to pay the bills. I got a little ahead of myself. This is the area where we talk about skill development, including the soft skills. And if you haven't seen the skills to pay the bills, it's available on ODEP's website. It's available on ours, and it's embedded inside of our how-to guide, and it's quite useful for the purposes of getting young people to think through and practice soft skill development. Next slide, please. And so here we have then a list of sample lessons, activities, and tools that are in the online how-to guide that can help you address job search issues, youth development issues, work-based learning issues, financial planning, and this is a link that takes you directly to that section. I assume, Judy, that we'll be posting this online, and that folks will be able to click right on it. Next slide, please. We wanted to also give you a few more resources, and that's what this page is designed to do. One around the use of interest inventories, again around the use of the skills to pay the bills. The bottom here you see for those that are working with young people with disabilities, we also find it helpful to spend some time trying to talk through how, when, where to disclose your disability, and they begin to learn through this toolkit. They begin to learn some of the intricacies of their protections under the Americans with Disabilities Act as they begin to move into the workplace. So a nice little toolkit. We have a companion for adults working with the young people who are going through the disclosure steps as well. Next slide, please. So now we have a few recommendations that we want to that we have made. We have an entire policy brief that lays out recommendations for national change. We have lays out recommendations for states and for local folks. And so here we have some aimed at the state leaders, which includes the collaboration across departments, not just within Department of Ed, but across departments, developing a common message about the values and the process of individualized learning plans. The district level, we found it really helpful for districts that have school-wide implementation team. So this doesn't work in a school if you don't have buy-in from the whole school. Whole school buy-in is absolutely critical, and having an implementation team, having a learning group as well is quite important. Ensuring that ILPs are inclusive, that means accessible, that whatever the technology is that's being used is in fact accessible to everybody. Getting community folks involved, including employers at the local level, is quite helpful. The state level as well, when they're developing the overall values and process and direction, and then clearly communicating with families throughout the process, throughout the education, clearly necessary to really help make these individual learning tools effective. Next slide, please. More actions for states. We find that the states really need to set the standards and figure out how they're going to measure the results of using these individualized learning plans. Some states have actually woven them into their accountability system. Others are still trying to figure out how to do that. The other thing that's really critical is the whole issue around professional development and building the capacity, both at the state level but particularly at the local level, so that folks know how to use these plans. They know the resources that they can turn to. So there needs to be, as part of making these work and making them come alive, there needs to be some investment in and sorting through professional development and capacity building. Next slide, please. So this is just, again, a special slide for special educators, because they really can play a role here. It gets them out of their own little silo. It really has them playing more of a supportive role with their young person in working with the school counselors and working with the teachers to make these individual learning plans come alive, excuse me, and help drive what's supposed to happen to move the young person toward career readiness, and also clearly to tie in have the IEP be complementary to and not at odds with the ILP. Okay, winding down here, next slide, please. How are we doing on time? I think we're okay. Okay, so this slide just shows you quick access to the documents to which I've been referring, the how-to guide. We have a simple fact sheet, two-pager that lays out what an ILP is, how it's used. We have, as I said, the policy paper that goes into a lot more detail and lays out recommendations for community or for national organizations, for the departments of education and labor and other agencies, as well as for state and local folks. I also, next slide please. I also wanted to give you, we have also done some what we call innovative strategy briefs, innovative practice briefs that are, in this case, that are complementary to the ILPs, but where we've actually gone around the country and asked various programs, what are they doing, what tools are they using in the areas of interest assessment or in the area of career development particularly. And so I wanted to just give you these three nice briefs that you can refer to and see, what are they doing in, a community-based program in Maine or in a high school high-tech program in the state of Florida around career exploration. So you get some concrete ideas about how these issues are being implemented, programs are using in their states. Okay, last slide, please. Just the advertisement. Here's how to reach me if you want anything further, want to discuss. And then you see also the logos of our multiple partners. This was not, the collaborative is exactly what it says. It is a collaborative. And so folks from Wisconsin and from Boston and from Alterum and from Social Dynamics, all of these folks helped in this very rich research project. The papers that I mentioned to you that are and showed you on the prior two slides are really just the beginning of the well-researched material that's been done. There are about 6 large papers that are now in the process of being approved that in the next several months we will be posting on our website, and you'll begin to see a lot more of this stuff show up in some journals as well. So with that, I guess I hope that this was helpful. I hope I didn't go too fast. And let's see, Judy, if we have any questions that we need to go through.
Yes, thank you, Curtis. I think that was terrific, and really it's so ironic. You affirmed what we've been trying to do throughout the month of January in this YAP event, is demonstrate how there's tools that could be used across youth and adult settings, and your notion of collaboration and the student engagement aspects of ILPs are really critical. I'll remind everybody, if you have any questions or comments, we would love to know if you've been using ILPs in your setting and what your experiences with ILPs are. Please type your question into the chat box here online. And while we're waiting for people to type in, Curtis, I had a question. It seems that this ILPs make sense for all of those reasons that you cited in your presentation. So as you go around and meet with states or meet with locals, what is the biggest challenge that people present as to why they may not be using ILPs?
A couple of things. First of all, as I showed, we have seen a very steady increase in states choosing to use ILPs. Again, jumping from 21 to 30, basically 38 states at this stage of the game. Some states have actually taken, like Wisconsin, both Wisconsin and Minnesota are fairly new into this, and they are taking their time to really walk through and work through the different issues. So some of the barriers are getting multiple agency buy-in, helping get the workforce development people at the table and understand why they should be at the table, or the voc rehab people along with the school people or the education people. Another issue tends to be the online student information system that they use, and whether or not everybody has access to it, or can you make it accessible. And I don't just mean from a disability standpoint. I mean, you have in a number of places you have issues of no, only the school people can see the stuff, or maybe the voc rehab people can get access, but not the counselors, or those sorts of things. So you see issues around that. I think you also see that there are a number of vendors who have discovered these ILPs and are creating, have their own tools that they're marketing to states, and states are taking their time to try to understand if they're going to work. And then I think fourthly, I think as I mentioned in one slide, and Kentucky's the one that's probably done this the best, but grappling with from a policy level, what are the standards that are driving us, and how are we going to tie in the use of these ILPs, and whether the ILPs are making a real difference in moving somebody toward college or toward a career into their accountability systems. Those are not easy questions, and states have to grapple with those.
Sure. Yeah, I think the more that we could integrate this work into existing reforms that are going on is important. We have a question from Sharon Johnston, and Sharon, her question is, please discuss the use of ILPs with adults who did not finish high school. How to make the process more adult-oriented so as not to disengage adult learners.
So, thank you, Sharon. Our work was really based on what's going on in schools. We've not done any real research on the out-of-school population yet. We are beginning to move in that direction, and you're beginning to see the creation of an individual career development plan in a couple of corners of the country to be used for that out-of-school population. But we actually don't. There are some examples. I believe it's in Arizona where they are using something like an ILP for young people who are in the juvenile justice system as they're getting ready to to move back into the community. But we don't know that much about it yet. We certainly believe that that an ILP and an individual career development plan can be just as effective in helping engage the young person. The issue really there becomes of all of the multiple people who are helping touch that young person to move forward, who has the access to the tool, to the electronic portfolio, and how are they using it to engage the young person. We haven't seen enough of it in the out of school population yet.
Yeah, I remember, this is Judy, I remember a long time ago in my career I worked with returning military, and we used career plans and a kind of somewhat modified system to engage returning military, and they were adult learners, and they had been a while since they've been in school. Some of them didn't have high school diplomas, but it was we were using career plans as a way to map the kinds of skills and experiences that the students had, and also to as kind of a roadmap as to where they wanted to go. So it was really effective in that context. So it'll be interesting to see.
And I can tell you that we did a presentation at the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals on these ILPs, and most of those folks are working with the out-of-school population, and they were just absolutely hungry for this and how to do it, and the tools, the how-to toolkit that shows us that there's some enthusiasm and creativity that on the part of the workforce professionals to be able to help use this kind of a tool.
Yeah, terrific. I would love to hear from others, either on this forum or do the discussion forum on the Youth and Adult Pathways website, in terms of if any of you have applied ILP concepts, maybe not ILP in the name, but the concepts of ILP for those adult learners that Sharon talks about. Additional questions? No?
Like I put everybody to sleep, huh?
No, it was really, really interesting, and I think people are really hungry for the resources that you shared. We'll just wait one more minute if anyone has any additional questions, and certainly we can follow up with the conversation we've been having here on the website. And Curtis, seeing no more questions, I will thank you again for your participation in a webinar. I think the notion of individualized learning plans has merit across youth and adult settings, and I'm anxious to hear how your work progresses into the adult field. Know that you've got an audience with the Youth and Adult Pathways microgroup. So if you ever have any questions or want to pick the brains of some really smart people who are members of this group, please do that. To the audience, I encourage you to look for the topics for future Youth and Adult Pathways events. I know that coming up in February, we've got a topic associated with bridge programs, and in March, we're going to be talking about data. I think data underlies all of what we do, so we should have some really rich and interesting discussion. Seeing no more questions, we'll end. And again, Curtis, thank you so much for your participation today. And this PowerPoint and the presentation and the audio will be archived on the YAP website so people can access the resources. And Curtis provided his contact information generously, so if you have any questions, you could either go through the YAP website or direct them directly to Curtis. So
Great, thank you very much, Judy.
Thank you, Curtis. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for your participation. Take care.